Welcome everybody to another episode of Beyond Haunted Vermont because, well, we are going to go beyond again and there is some stuff we rated in Vermont, but nonetheless, we have returning guest Ronald Murphy. Ron, welcome back again.
Oh, it is a pleasure to be here, my friend. And anytime I can get up to the New England area is a good time, even if it's virtually or vicariously through a program. And before the show started, I said there's a possibility that I'll be attending the Vermont Sci-Fi and Horror Festival. So hopefully, within the next few months, our paths will cross, and anybody that happens to be a listener up there, hopefully they'll stop by and say hello too. I love those kind of opportunities.
Yeah, if memory serves me right, I'm looking at the calendar right now, but as I remember right, yes, the Vermont Expo Sci-Fi and Horror convention thing, it will be April 25th and the 26th, because I do remember that it is a 2-day event. There's already some great guests that have already been announced there, so I can't wait. Adam Berry is one of them, and a few other people, so it's going to be a good show.
Right, and I believe it's like almost right on the banks of the Lake Champlain as well too. So if you want to do some monster hunting up there, that gives you the opportunity as well. Like I said, I put my name into the mix, and I'm hoping that the powers that be will choose me to go up there because I would love to talk about vampires or werewolves or anything that relates to the whole sci-fi genre as well as the paranormal too. I like when everything gets tied together like that.
Yeah, for sure. So you talk vampire too, huh? Okay, I'll make a jot that down too right now. But anyway,
Yeah, some of my favorite things. So, the reason why I write the way that I do is, my mother was very much into the paranormal growing up, but she was also into horror movies, right? And I
Mhm.
was a child that grew up in the 1970s, and these were like the classic Hammer horror programs that we would get these movies that would come over from England starring, Peter Cushing and Christopher Lee and all these great actors and there would be the Kiss of Dracula, the Curse of Frankenstein, and all this stuff. So as much as I grew up with the black and white ones like the Lon Chaney and everything, my generation also had the Hammer horror movies as well too. And as a
Mm.
kid, I was frightened by these things, but I was also so curious about what made these things tick from a very psychological point of view. Looking back at it now, and the reason why I write about this stuff is because my childhood was so, ingrained within these kind of horror motifs and within these archetypes that really, I mean, I was basically brought up to do nothing but this. And that's why it's such a passion for me, is because I get to reconnect with my past. I lost my mom about 24 years ago. And every time I sit down to write a book, it's kind of like sitting down at the kitchen table and having a conversation with her because it was really those conversations I had in my youth that made me the kind of speculative human being I am now.
Mm. Well, first off, I apologize for your loss of your mother 24 years ago. 24 years ago for me would be 2 days after Christmas. I lost my mother's mom, and then the next year, September 16th, 2003, is when I lost my dad. So yeah,
Oh my goodness, yeah, and it's a shame because the older we get, the more the losses come, and
yeah,
the people. It's a shame, but also I think the other reason why the paranormal is so attractive to folks like you and I is because it also is like a mystery, right? Like we know that there's more out there than just this. There has to be out more than out there for this. So we're kind of on this quest to find out why we're here, where we're going, where we came from. And, that might sound kind of strange talking about, fairies and Bigfoot and all these other kind of monsters, but it's all from that same source. It's from that same, elemental ether where all this kind of mystery comes from. And by exploring these things, we're really trying to ask some of these great monumental questions that humanity has asked since the very beginning.
yeah, yeah. And I will add to that by saying, um, really, so this is going to sound really weird, Ron. Ready?
Mm-hmm. Go
And
for it.
for the listeners, so I actually had my mother have to remind me of this. So anyway, the first time I learned about death was when my mother's father passed away, which was September 16th, 1994. Okay. Now, 2 years, or not 2 years, a year later, it was basically within, now this gets weirder. 24 hours later in 1995, I lost within 24 hours my dad's dad, and then it was my uncle, or it was vice versa. It was either my uncle and then the grandfather. It was so weird. And what made it even so weird is that my uncle and grandfather shared the same hospital room. So I could only
Wow.
imagine, yeah. So I could only imagine, like, whoever went first and then they didn't come back into the room, and whoever was left, kind of like, but geez,
Right. Right.
uh,
No,
and
see,
yeah.
yeah. Keep on going because I really I'm listening to what you have to say. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say. So anyway, so September 16th, 1994. September 16th came back again for my dad. September 16th, 2003.
Mm. Well, what you say is truly pertinent to the subject matter that we're talking about because I was lucky growing up. I never had anybody close to me pass away until I was much older to understand it. Like even pets I had, we had a dog, and the dog didn't pass away until I was much older as well too. So really, I was kind of cloistered away from all the true terrors of life out there. I had my grandmother and my great grandmother, and my mom and my brother, and it was a very tight, close little family. And the only time whenever I saw anything regarding death was the theoretical side of it from watching horror movies. So the first time I saw anybody die, they were basically acting. It was somebody getting killed by Dracula or Dracula being killed itself or what have you. So this all does indeed fit in. So we're talking about the paranormal. We're talking about the metaphysical and all this kind of stuff. And at the end of the day, we're asking the same questions. Where does this stuff go? Where does it come from? And ultimately, where do we end up as well?
Mm. And that became my mindset when I was little. It was like, so, what happens after we close our eyes for the last time, kind of thing. That became my
Right,
mindset even when I was little.
right. And so we know that human beings, we've probably been around in this form for a couple 100,000 years to be conservative, but there was other offshoots of the hominin species. We have the Neanderthals, and we have the Denisovans, and we have the other groups as well too. And what is so fascinating is that these groups that were offshoots of ours that never ended up being Homo sapiens, they also had the same fears and the same hopes and dreams as well, because we know that they buried their dead with grave goods. So even these people that were not officially human, they still had awe with the natural world around them. They still produced art, whether it's some chisels on a rock or a hand painted on a wall. So they understood what it was like to create, but they also understood that this human form wasn't immortal, right? That something happens to it. But they also saw that it was important to keep this human form as well because you know, something miraculous happens. Whether they saw this in a religious view or not, they knew that this body was somehow going to go on, and they buried their dead, and they honored their dead. They put flowers into the grave, and they also put grave goods in there as well too. So even those ancestors of ours, or I guess we should say those cousins of ours, um, off of the Homo sapien family tree, even they regarded death as something not only mysterious, but also as a door to another realm. And I'm sure whenever they were sitting around campfires in France and in Germany, 300,000 years ago, they probably told their own version of ghost stories as well.
Oh yeah, I totally agree with that statement. They must
Yep.
have, because how else would we have gotten these older, or yeah, like older ancient tales that we kind of look back to that have been recorded to stay into the do I dare say, like, limelight, I guess, so that way we can
Yeah,
see
sure.
any like patterns, I guess, or
That's
whatever.
right.
Yeah,
That's right.
yeah.
Yeah, when we go farther, as far back in time as we possibly can go, of course, there's a lot of speculation on it as well. But even when we start taking layer by layer off of this onion, trying to get the source of what we can see, we really are left with the same exact questions that we have now. These people were within a world that they knew had more there than meets the eye. They knew that there was something after death, but you also can read between the lines and suggest that they also knew out there were things like Bigfoot or Dogman or all this kind of stuff, because we have not only the traditions that come to us from ancient sources, via oral traditions, just because they show up in Greek form or an Egyptian form doesn't mean that they were created right then and there. If we see something that was created 5,000 years ago, it probably had an oral tradition that may have went back twice as long as we have it extant right now. So we know that our ancients also had a view of the world, that there is something else out there that we can't completely explain what it is, but it is out there.
Right. Now I want to go back to on the topic of horror movies. So what's funny is I don't get to share this one too much. Um, so the first time I ever kind of saw like a quote horror movie for like maybe I don't know, what would it say, 2 minutes or so. It was when I was little and I snuck down the stairs and I peeked into the living room when I should have been asleep, and my parents were watching Bram Stoker Dracula, and of course
Oh yes.
it had to have been the part where the werewolf and the other character, Mina, I believe, was on like the table, and as that scene start to play out, I was just like, "Yeah, I don't think I need to be watching this," and I like somehow managed to ninja my way back upstairs. But yeah, that was like my first way of of what the hell were they watching, basically.
Right, right. Yeah, it's odd that you would say that because I'm a little bit older than you. So whenever Bram Stoker came out, I was actually in college whenever it came out, and I remember like I didn't want to see it. Like it was one of these things where I thought, it's Keanu Reeves, it's Winona Ryder. I don't want to see this movie. And whenever I sat down in the movie theater and the place went quiet and the lights went off and they started playing, I was mesmerized. I mean, the sound of the music, the ambience of everything, and the acting of Gary Oldman. But that scene sticks with me to this day. And like I get afraid of the dark, and sometimes wherever I'm all by myself at home, that scene will sometimes flash through my mind because it was so utterly terrifying. So I kind of scare myself with that scene even today.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's kind of weird to watch it nowadays for me too, just probably because of that. Like it left that weird. I don't want to say PTSD, but I don't know a good wording for that. It's like it left like that mark, I guess, that weird mark when I was little.
That's right. That's right. And I think there probably is something to be said about that because, I grew up in, the X generation where, we were drinking water out of garden hoses, like, and I've told this to my kids before, and I've told it to other people. I never remember eating breakfast or lunch anytime during my formative years because we were outside all the time. And
Yep.
I never remember coming in. It was just something we did. We went outside, we played until we were exhausted. The street lights came on, and we had to be in our yard. Now, we didn't have to necessarily be inside, but we had to be back to our yard whenever the lights came on. And, then we would catch fireflies and all that kind of stuff. But I don't
Hmm.
know how we survived. I really don't. We were out, at 7 years old, making fires in the woods, when like nobody would ever fathom doing something like that today. But we could be neighborhoods away and people would still know us by name. They would know our parents, of course. And everything seemed to be pretty, everything was interconnected that way. But no, I think whenever we came from these kind of Norman Rockwell like settings, which mine very much was, you come from a small town, you have your friends, and anytime you witness a horror movie, it is scarring, right? There is a little bit of PTSD there. So I remember the first time I saw, Jason
Mm.
or Freddy Krueger, all those other kind of stuff. We aren't confronted with these kind of things in real life. We didn't have any real person boogeyman around to fear. I came from a town that had two streetlights in it, so there was no real fear. All that fear came from the outside, and filtered in through our television. And I still have memories. They're very faint, but I have still have memories when they were talking about the Vietnam War on television, and I remember how frightening that was from a kid because I didn't understand how war worked. But you see bodies and you see people getting injured and everything like that. So you knew that things weren't good, right? You knew that the world wasn't necessarily perfect. But then you sit down, like you said, and you usually encounter these kind of things whenever you kind of like sneak around a corner and you're confronted by it. But yeah, whenever the hardcore horror movies, I think they are indeed very, very trauma causing. And there's a lot of people out there that are showing kids these kind of movies. I think it can do some pretty serious damage.
Mm. Yeah, I can think of one movie that can do some serious damage if you're not used to that type of graphic, I would say. Yeah. Anyway, yeah, you know what? That's funny. I'll touch on what you were saying too, and then, man, I feel like this had turned into a big rant, but that's okay. I love
It's
these
okay.
memories
Rents are
sometimes.
good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So I was just like you, Ron. I drank out of the garden hose and all that shit too. So I was also the kid that got told, "Don't you dare come back until it's nighttime." And of course, thank God I was surrounded by woods as well, so I would go out there and it's funny. I forget. Oh, I was talking to a guy that lives in Wisconsin, but he had a Bigfoot sighting here when he was 9 years old in Vermont. So I was like, oh, I'd love to hear this. So anyway, his story for some weird reason reminded me that, oh, I remember that one time when I was mysteriously in the woods for the day and I came across this skull of an animal, not a kill site, but because there was no other bones except for the skull of the head of, I'm assuming it was a deer.
Hmm.
Anyway, I remember picking up the skull and just thinking to myself, like, oh my God, this is awesome, and then bringing it back to my house.
Yep. Yep. I did the exact same thing. Exact same thing. So we must have had a very similar childhood because I remember finding skulls, whether it's a deer. I remember one time finding a dead dog that had turned to bones and stuff. And I
Oh
remember
man.
taking those bones back because it was fascinating to me. I mean, there's an architecture to death. And, it was one of those things where I would take it back. It might have been morbid, but, I also learned about the world around me as well, too. And we had reverence for it, right? We appreciated it. We weren't, crushing these things with sticks or anything. We were taking them home as a way of like, almost honoring the creature from which it came.
That's true. That is very true because nowadays you can just we use skulls for displays for altars and
Right.
everything else projects really. Yeah, I mean there's a lot of things you can pretty much do or just show them off one or the other. So
That's
um,
right. That's right. Yeah. And I think that is another thing that we should talk about here briefly as well too. because even though we were the drinking out of hose generation, right, and even though we did all that kind of stuff, we
Hmm.
would go into the woods, and we were never killing anything or never hurting anything. We weren't
No.
like that. Nothing was getting hurt, and because we went into the woods, and because we grew up in that kind of environment, we tended to really become stewards of those things, right? All the places where
Hmm.
I have played have been torn down, right? There's a Walmart in one of them right now, and then there's a housing complex in another one. And I long to have my children have that kind of experience, but they'll never have it because we don't know when to leave well enough alone. So the places where I would be seeing deer whenever I was a kid, or catching frogs in a jar. All these places where that were, the wilderness for me, right? I was entering the domain into which Bigfoot lived in my imagination. And now there's nothing there. It's concrete. It's a terrible thing that has happened, because the more we take away the wildness, the more that is around us is nothing but human. And humanity needs a little bit of the natural world to make us really who we are. We're designed to be a part of that world. We think that, oh, it's the woods. But indeed, we were created to live in that environment. I mean, it's cold outside right now. I probably have the temperature up to about 80 degrees, and as I'm sitting here talking to you, I'm wrapped up in my electric blanket. We have all these comforts right now, but we were from before our birth. We as human beings are meant to be out in that environment. And
Hmm.
we've kind of forsaken where we came from, and now we just treat it as if it's going to be an endless resource for us. But the more that we look around, we see that is not the case, and all these places, like I said, where I was looking for Bigfoot, doesn't exist anymore. And I think sooner or later you'll have a time whenever we won't have very many wild spaces left.
Well, that's mainly because, well, humanity just keeps on getting populated, as I may say. But
And there's money. I mean, that's the other thing too.
yeah, that too.
Yeah, there's
Yeah.
money to be made by cutting down trees and putting in a sidewalk and a road and building a couple houses. But,
Hmm.
all these things that we share the earth with, all these other things, these animals, they have no place to go. And then people start complaining because they're hitting deers with
Ex-
cars, or they have a raccoon living in their backyard. They just have no place left to go anymore.
exactly. And then people get annoyed when they start invading their home, when
Uh huh.
we do that all the time when we're going out in the wood. But anyway, yeah, you kind of remind me, back when my dad was alive, the back road we used to take to go, like, soda can picking up, basically, just because we could, and turning the cans in to return, and go hunting, or just go for a hike, or go four wheeling. Yeah, all that stuff where I used to live has been turned into houses. Yeah,
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. All these. So that's odd that you said that, because all these places that I grew up turned into houses that I can't afford, right? So so all the places where I was, riding my bike and catching frogs and all these kind of stuff, now there's people living there where I used to play as a kid, and I can't afford to be there. But as a kid, this was my free places to roam, right? Nobody charged me anything. This was my playground, and now
Yep.
people are paying hundreds of thousands of dollars to live in a house that looks like the cookie cutter house next to them, and the wilderness is gone. So yeah, to each their
Mm.
own, I suppose. But I'd much rather be out there with the that warm mud going through my toes, looking for frogs again.
Oh my God, I remember, there was a couple houses down from where I was growing up, and they didn't mind, um, that my sister and I, or whoever, even like my friends or whatever, came down and, like, basically, like, tried to catch salamanders in their pond.
Yep, yep. Well, that's true too. I mean, so we didn't have boundaries either, right? Like nobody
Right.
had fences up or anything, and we would be in other people's yards all the time. And the reason why nobody said anything is because nobody was hurting anything. It's not like nowadays, whenever people are afraid to let people in their yards because something's going to be destroyed or somebody's going to die or something like that. None of that kind
Mm.
of stuff happened. I mean, we wouldn't even scrape a knee, and if we did, we didn't go sue anybody. We just, washed it off in the pond, and we kept on going. But no, I like that there was no boundaries, and there was no boundaries, but there were rules as well. We followed the rules of nature. We knew what we should and we shouldn't do. And as kids, that's the best way to be brought up.
Oh, totally. Yeah, because we
Yeah.
didn't have any distractions, and we didn't always stay inside. Where nowadays, I feel like because of being an adult, sometimes it's like, I can't really afford to go anywhere, So like,
That's all.
uh,
Absolutely. Now, all these places, keep in mind, too, where I was, playing and all that stuff. This also became the place where my first Bigfoot investigations came from. So, as a kid, I had to have a Bigfoot club, as I called it. Very original. I got some books from the library, and I read up on Bigfoot. So I thought that, at the age of 6 or 7, I thought, I was a Bigfoot expert, right? So I
mhm.
got some neighborhood kids, and they joined my club, and we would go out and we would go into the woods and we would look for Bigfoot. That's just the things that we did, and we usually got a couple 100 yards into the woods before we scared ourselves and we ran back out again. But it was great. It was great. Waking up on a Monday morning in June after the school bells have silenced, and we're sitting there in our shorts and our striped socks from the 1970s, and we would be waking up and we would be looking out the window, and everything out that window was a world of possibilities. And in that world, Bigfoot was very much a flesh and blood creature that was alive out there and was just waiting for me to find it. And that's how I did my time as a child. I regret not doing more of it. If I could, I would have done more of it. But boy, I'll tell you, I was still having fun. I think I was one of those kids that knew that this was going to be fleeting, and I really did appreciate it the entire time.
Yeah, yeah. I'm trying to figure out a good way to put this, but my childhood became not so much of a good childhood after my father had been diagnosed with brain cancer, and he survived it, but it definitely what would say basically it took the side of his brain where I'm assuming it was suppressing the bad memories from Vietnam, because my sister and I, we had those moments where like we could be eating breakfast downstairs, and next thing you know, my dad is flipping out at us, all just because we're just sitting at the table next to a window. So my dad would just grab us by the shoulders and yank us down away from the windows, and he would be like, don't be by the windows, don't look outside the windows, because the enemy, the Vietnamese, they'll see you, and the enemy will see
Wow.
you. And it really got worse when uh, my mother was awoken one morning with my father basically pointing a gun at her, because he literally thought that my mother was an enemy. And from then
Wow, wow,
on,
wow.
yeah, and from then on, basically, my family became divorced. So my childhood kind of got ruined a little bit. But where we ended up going for like the rest of my middle school and somewhat high school, uh, we did find a place again that had some woods, but it wasn't the same woods like I was brought up around, if that
Right.
makes sense.
No, it was a workable facsimile, but not the same. I do understand. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
And,
exactly it.
yeah. So, that's another good point because, of course, I paint my past as if it were truly some sort of portrait. And as the many beautiful memories that I have from it, I still was coming from a family that, a lot of the adults in my family suffered from alcoholism, right? And,
Mm,
we didn't have a lot of money because I was raised by a single mom. So, like, looking back on it, we did have a lot of stuff to complain about, right? It
hmm
wasn't all rainbows and butterflies, but there was enough of the wildness in there to allow me to be, feral and also to find my place in this world. And that's what I admire about it so much is because I didn't have to be rich to go explore the woods, right? And my home life didn't have to be 100% perfect for me to go out there to look for Bigfoot because I looked at nature as for what it was, right? It was a living mystery, and
hmm
diving into that mystery and searching it out, it really kind of alleviated all the ghosts that were starting around in my house. All the bad things were really negated by all the good things that I was doing during the day of my youth.
Right. Yeah, yeah, the ghost of our past, basically. Yeah, I totally feel that. I'm, so Ronald, I would love to keep ranting with you, but we're not here to really rant too much like that. But it is at the same time interesting because I mean it's a cool way to, I guess you could say almost, you said Bigfoot, which I think originally, if I have your book, let me see right here, yeah. So your book that we sort of mentioned last time, so I'm going to say it again. Whites in the Mist. You have
Hmm.
in the beginning you were talking about a case that you were originally seeking out, and it looks like okay. So originally it was not Bigfoot, but it was for a dogman actually. So with this is kind of like what we're going to be talking for a little bit is dogman, just
Sure.
because it's National Werewolf Day kind of thing. But anyway, um, so yeah, which is funny because you know what? Before this episode, I went back later today and I actually re-listened to the first time you and I talked. In that conversation, you had brought up the intention of encountering these Earthlights for I'm assuming the first time or something to this case that you were regarding. You didn't really say if you were investigating a Bigfoot or maybe this Dogman case, but I just want to let you, I guess, talk to us. So what with this Dogman thing, I guess, is what kind of came about this?
That's a great question. Yes. So the book, the Lights in the Mist came out. I wrote it relatively recently, but it really was written at the time that I started to do research, like serious research, and I was in my 20s. So I was in my later 20s, and we were investigating. By we, I meant a group of people that were like minded got together to do some paranormal research. We decided that we were going to get together and investigate an area where there was a supposed werewolf sighting. Right, the word dogman really wasn't out there. At least here in Western Pennsylvania, it wasn't really out there until much later. So we called it for what it was. It was a werewolf for all intents and purposes. So
Hmm
we were out investigating this area where it had reported werewolf sightings. And as my friend and I were down there looking around, strange things started to happen. We were looking for a werewolf, but everything else than a werewolf started to happen. So it appeared that, like the sky, the air all around us was starting to become static charged, almost with like a static electricity, all around us. I thought, well, this is very, very odd because I never had anything happen like that to me before. And then we turned around to go back to where we parked. It was about 2 miles away from the investigation site. And as we turned around, this light just lit up in the middle of the path. Now, the scary part about it is that we knew that we had to go that way to get to the car. There was no other way. There's one way in, one way out, and that's the same way. So we start heading towards where that light came on. It just kind of lit up and it flickered off. It was stunning. We didn't really know what to make of it, but we had to get out that way. So when we reached the site where the light emanated, we start hearing something in the woods on our right hand side as if something's following us, right? And so, as two people that were down there looking for a werewolf, immediately that's what comes to mind, right? But whatever was going on, we knew that whatever was down there with us, and this is the scary part, wasn't down there until the light came on. So this is really what got me interested in the idea of not only orbs or these kind of sentient energies that might be part of the environment, but also, is it possible that what I saw was a portal, right? Is it possible that the electricity that we saw in the air around us was something, entering into our world or tearing a hole into our reality for something else to come through? And look, I've been investigating this for a while. This is probably, 30 years on since this happened to me. And looking back on it right now, as I try to make some sort of logical sense, I really don't know what else to say, right?
Mm-hmm.
The only thing I can say is we went down there to investigate, something unexplained that people had sighted down there, right? And I feel that when we were down there, there was nothing out there unusual until this light came on, and that was the catalyst for whatever now was following us on our right hand side of the woods. And so we had to get out of there. I mean, it was dark. I mean, it was near midnight, and these were real woods. These aren't like woods with a path or anything like that. But I got so far into the woods that the branches started hitting my face and everything like that, and I was starting to panic, right? Because it seemed as if I was going closer to whatever was following us than away from it. So then I hear my name being called off on the left-hand side, which this is the only time that this has ever happened to me as well, too. And that, with whatever called my name, was then we were able to find our bearings and get back out, because where my name came from is where our car was parked. And, of course, there was nobody else down there with us. So all this kind of stuff, putting it all together, I'm trying to make some sort of narrative that makes sense. And I can only say that we were down investigating something, something tore into our reality that allowed something to come in that was predatory by nature. And then for some reason, something also came in that was able to, I don't want to sound too melodramatic here, but also something came in to save us as well, too. Because without that, my name being called, right? Without my name being called, we wouldn't have been able to find our way back, or, even something, less serious than that. This is an area with a lot of cliffs and a lot of, dangerous places as well, too. So if something didn't attack us and make us into its meal that day, it's extremely likely that something would have happened just through happenstance of trying to get through a very nasty terrain. So that is what set me off in my wonderful world of paranormal investigations from a serious adult point of view.
Wow, man. Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
When I was sort of reading that in your book, it was just like, holy hell. Like, I wouldn't even know what I would do in that moment. And then, you know what? And then for some weird reason, I remembered night going back to a rant for a minute, but this kind of fits perfectly for this narrative just a little bit. But I remember one night specifically, me and a friend were out camping at Silver Lake here in what would that be? Brandon, Brandon, Vermont. I want to say almost near Middlebury, Vermont. Anyway, the point to this is sometimes if you go up to Silver Lake to camp, which is about like a 3-mile hike unless you take the back way, but we went the front way up. Anyway, the point to all of this particular weekend or week, whenever this happened, we went up to stay the night. What was weird about this trip, though, was it was eerily quiet. There wasn't that many campers or hikers in general, we were the only ones there that night that were just staying for a couple nights in the woods, basically. However, though, and I tried reaching out to my friend to ask if he remembered why we did this, but he could not remember why we ended up doing it. But during the night, it was so quiet and so pitch black, like we couldn't even see our hand in front of our face. We got up in the middle of the night and literally walked our asses all the way down the 3 mile trail and all the way back to where the campers site is, basically, where like all of us were actually in campers, like camping, basically. So, but for the life of me, I have no idea why we did that. And ironically, since my uh camper where my camper was, like for my family, there was a what do you call that, like a screen door porch area, I would say, for lack of. Anyway, that door to get inside was locked. So guess what? I could not get in to go into the camper to even go to sleep that night. So guess what happened? Me and this other guy had to go walking back up the 3 mile hike again and back into
Oh
our tent.
my goodness gracious! Yeah, wow. Yeah, that will put some hair on your chest too, because I know what happens, especially whenever you're younger like that, and you're out in the woods. Everybody is scaring each other as well too.
Yep.
And we're projecting our fears onto the woods. Excuse me, like I was doing even whenever I was in my 20s. Looking for a werewolf. Every twig that snapped immediately was a werewolf, and until you are confronted with something that you don't understand, and then the plausibility of a werewolf becomes sickeningly possible, and that's what happened. I mean, I was terrified, and I don't think that we really understand the flight or fight response until we are confronted by something that is that primordial. There's something in us that still exists, that we know that we are being hunted, and that's the first time I ever felt as if I was being hunted, and there's no other way to explain it. It appeared that we were being stalked, because the way we were walking and the way that we were seemingly being led by what was ever in those woods, it felt as if we were being stalked, and whatever that predator was, it was waiting until we made one crucial mistake, and then we would have been done. And again, if my name wasn't called out, I probably would have got to the point on my way out of the woods that I would have got either entangled into more underbrush and found it very hard to get away, or I would have naturally fallen into some sort of small hollow or ravine or whatever, and got hurt to the point that I could not move. So whenever I say about being hunted, that's truly what I mean. It felt as if something was trying to lead me into a place that would be easy to basically pounce.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the scary thing, isn't it? Yeah,
It is.
yeah, like that's why I wanted to bring up that weird story. Like I should add this too. So back in the day of being young and stupid, which is pretty much what we did that night.
Mm-hmm.
I should also add we didn't have flashlights and we didn't have like phone with lights on it, like with
Oh
lights or
hell
anything like
no! That's right.
that. So we literally had like zero light. We had maybe the stars, like when we actually got toward the road and the water and stuff like that. But yeah, that was it, man. Nope.
Oh yeah. So my little paranormal group that I had,
Hmm.
we had a couple flashlights, nothing big, like Walmart $5 flashlights or whatever, and I had myself a little handycam. Right, it was a little, like, I guess they were, what were they, 8 millimeter or something like that. Instead of putting in the big VHS tape, this was the generation where you could put in just that little wee tape. Now this was a time well before flash drives and everything like that. So you still had, this was still kind of prehistoric by today's standards. But we had all this equipment, right? Like we had basic equipment that people would go and do an okay ghost hunt with, and
Hmm.
all this equipment that we had started to strangely not only lose power, but also malfunction as well. So all of the classic things that happened was happening to us, batteries draining, the lights not working, things flickering off and on. Now, I was lucky that I was able to uh, photograph this stuff and document it. So this kind of stuff rarely happens. People say, "Oh, I wish I had would have had a camera." Yeah, I did have a camera, and I was able to document the light coming on and the sounds of something following us in the woods. But you have to keep in mind that this is pitch black outside. You're not seeing any kind of full-bodied creature or anything, and you're really not able to hear much at all. Maybe a snap here and there, but nothing else. And my name does not show up on the video as well. But you could see that at
Interesting.
least we were very disturbed by what was going on. So, but even if I captured evidence, which I did, it's still so inconclusive because it's not showing anything that I just described, right? And that's
Mm.
going to be a problem as well too, because even if we have photographic evidence, it really doesn't prove our point, because it shows a light and it shows us being very terrified in the woods, but it doesn't show the feelings and the emotions that go along with it.
Right. So, so you must have gotten brought up with the floppy drive disk or whatever. Yeah, floppy
Oh,
drive
that
disk.
absolutely, yeah, the good old floppy disk. That's exactly right. Oh, yeah, it was so. I mean, looking back on it now, it's like something that you could be finding in a museum, and you can find this stuff in a museum. But I remember, the first time I had what I thought was a Bigfoot encounter. My
Hmm.
brother and I was in college. This is before I was investigating Dogman. This was,
Hmm.
I was in college and we were living along the base of White's Woods in Indiana County, Pennsylvania, and it was substantial woods. Several hundred acres of woods, and it's all protected, so there's no hunting there or anything. And we moved into a place, and we noticed in the summertime there would be this whistling that would happen, and it always happened uh, on days that it wasn't raining. It was like warm summer nights, and it always happened between 12 and 3 o'clock in the morning, which is so bizarre, because that's the witching hour and all that stuff. And you say, you got to be making this up. No, this is absolutely true. And it's true because nobody would believe it if you said, yeah, this happens between 12 and 3, right? But there was these sounds that happened between 12 and 3. And, I was in my 20s. My brother was in his 20s. We were in our early 20s. And we thought, hey, if this happens again, let's go out and investigate it. So one evening, and again, it was about probably 2:30 in the morning. We hear this whistling again. We thought, okay, this is the night. We're going to go check it out. So I grab a sword, and my brother grabs a baseball bat, and we open up the door, and we go out onto our porch, and we can. This is the first time we ever go outside and hear the sound, and the whistle has such a resonance to it that it actually vibrates within your stomach. Like me sitting here right now, I can still feel it. It was a very palpable vibration in the stomach. So whatever was putting out that whistle was doing it at such a decibel to be able to actually physically move your body, right? And so we thought, hey, look, we're still going to try this out. We have weapons, so we turn, we go to the back of the house, and at the back of the house, we have a little grove that leads right until you get into White's Woods. And whatever was doing the whistling, we knew was in the grove because it was that close. Like you could feel this shock wave coming onto your body from the whistling that was going on. So our quarry, the thing that we were after, was like right there in this grove in the wee hours of the morning, and it was simply sitting there waiting to be discovered. So as we start venturing into the tree line of the grove, um, something really scary happens, and it even shocks me now to even talk about it. So the whistling continues, right? The whistling is still going on, but as this thing is whistling, it also begins to growl at us as well. So it's making two sounds at once, and the growl is so loud and so powerful that you can actually hear it taking oxygen in order to produce the growl, and it even has a wet sound to it as well too, as if it's like breathing and also like almost kind of like gurgling, and the whistle was still going on. So whether it was using infrasound or it was able to make two different frequencies at one time, whatever it was, it caused my brother and I, who were again in our early 20s, in good shape, both carrying weapons, to run back to the house as if we were, little children that got scared from by the boogeyman. So again, we didn't see anything, but just hearing this was enough to keep us away. And after that particular incident, we never heard it again. So it had went on for a couple of years in the summertime, and then our summertime visitor never came back. It's possible because we got that close to it or whatever. But yeah, to this day, I have no idea what happened. But yeah, that was kind of my close encounters with Bigfoot. And this was probably, I'm thinking, 1995, because I just started graduate school at the time. And so I had no idea what to make of it. So I got onto the computer, speaking of floppy drives, or floppy disks, I got on the computer and I looked up Bigfoot in Pennsylvania, and one website came up. You can imagine, now there will be thousands. One
Mm-hmm.
website came up, and it was for the Pittsburgh Bigfoot Society, and they came out and they did an investigation. But that's how quickly times have changed. So think about this. Before the advent of the internet, people were having these kind of encounters all the time. I'm quite sure of it, but it wasn't all linked together because we didn't have the technology yet. Now everybody's, faking things and using AI and all that stuff to a point that it becomes part of this global community. But at one time, once upon a time, people were hearing and seeing things, they couldn't make any sense of it, and there was nobody to tell. So all this stuff went unreported for so many years. But yeah, so I'm happy with the proliferation of the internet to get out, to get out people's eyewitness accounts. But on the flip side of that as well too, there's so many people out there faking things as well. It takes a lot to try to weed through all this to get to to get to the truth.
Absolutely, man. Yeah, that's funny. Yeah, I kind of remember like back in the day where it was mainly message board forums. That was mainly it. Besides the website that started to pop up, like as the internet grew. Um, I want to go. You've already said some interesting things, and um, I'm trying to figure out if I should wait on one until maybe we come back for like the spook light thing again. Because I know we were talking about having you back on for that. Because I know my focus right now is trying to just talk Dogman and stuff like that, and you're going into
Mm.
Bigfoot, which is fine because that actually adds to what I've already have mentioned in this episode, sort of. Because it's like it's one of those popular questions, and maybe I should just say this one first. And then I'll go into breaking down what you have shared a little bit. And that is so you are the perfect specimen there, Ron, for this question. And that is, and that is, would you rather run into a Bigfoot or have another encounter with a dogman again?
Oh yeah, so the dog man. So you know, as I researched the dog man and listened to people's eyewitness testimony, I've actually been lucky enough to be a speaker at two conferences just focused on the dog man. One was in Paris, Tennessee, and the other one was right outside of Dallas, Texas. And I was lucky to be on panels, or not on panels, on to do a lecture on just this subject and to hear people talk about this and to investigate this through the pages of history as well. Nobody ever has a positive dogman encounter, right? Like
No.
anytime you encounter this thing, it's always very, very negative. So I would love to know what it is, but as far as an encounter with it, absolutely not. I don't like to call things evil because that's kind of like me projecting my kind of like my evaluation on it, right?
Hmm.
So if this is an animal, it's not evil, but it would act on instincts. Instincts are never evil by nature or by source. But whatever is out there that they call dogman, it seems to derive from some sort of malevolent force, and that's the thing that scares the hell out of me. I'd much rather deal with Bigfoot than a dog man, because I think you know that we are probably basically nothing more than prey to an apex predator like the dog man, and a lot of people go missing every year, and that might be the reason why.
Mm. I love your response, man. So, if I may, I want to continue this now by saying, uh, going back to you with your encounter in the woods there, where you said like as soon as this light kind of flipped on, I'll just say, and this thing basically just showed up, or it was there on your right hand side, right?
Right hand side, yes, sir. Yep.
Okay. So anyway, I'm again, man. I don't know what it is, but I feel like this is manifesting perfectly with this episode. So here we go again, people. So when I started to rethink about how I wanted to do this episode, okay,
Hmm.
I went back to what made me kind of start the beginning, which is the Egyptian lore. Now, if we look back at the Egyptian, right, they had, I'll just say, two gods of wolves per se, jackals, however you want to look at them. One of them, besides Anubis, because Anubis is everywhere.
Hmm.
Let's not lie about that. But one god of Egyptian lore, if that's a good term for this, is, oh man. All right, here we go. Weep were wet. Weep were wet. Yeah.
Hmm.
Uh, Now, anyway, if we look at Weep were wet, uh, he is known as the opener of the ways, or should I say, the opener of pathways, which nowadays we could say pathways are portals. So,
Absolutely, absolutely. Yep, yep, yep,
so I guess what
yep.
I'm trying to say is, Ronald, is throughout your years and even maybe after this, this scary encounter, because I mean the fact that you came out alive, man, is always good. You didn't become a missing person like we hear about sometimes with Land Between the Lakes in Kentucky,
Hmm.
which is another mysterious, bizarre place. But have you thought about that? That maybe these creature werewolves, as you kind of first started into them before we got the term dogman, thanks to Linda Godfrey, may she rest in peace as well. But like, have you, I mean, obviously you looked into it, but have you thought about maybe the Weppua wet is maybe what these creatures are?
So sure, and I'll tell you, and this is kind of like the mic drop whenever it comes to this. So I depended a lot on Linda Godfrey. She and I had become friends, and we would actually talk on the phone, and it was very nice. She's a very pleasant, very intelligent person. But she was reporting these dogman sightings that were happening in and around Indian burial mounds. I'm sure you know that for a fact.
Yep.
And then I was interviewing a lot of people that were having these dogman encounters around, burial sites. Right now, the thing that was following me on my right hand side.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, so the thing that called my name on my left hand side, there was an abandoned graveyard up in that area. So again, we have this connection with death. We have this connection with burials, and just like you and I started to talk at the very beginning of the show, maybe the ultimate portal in our life is opened up whenever that energy leaves this body and transforms over to the other side. Right? That might be the key that opens it. But yes, I think that is the point. Anubis is often seen opening the mouth. as if it's allowing the spirit of the dead to leave by the mouth to move on to the next life. So I think
Mm,
what we're having here is, and graveyards are always liminal areas, especially in Egypt, because they buried their dead in the desert away from people, so you didn't get any kind of contagion and disease and plaguing like that coming from bodies. So they were always out in places that were considered no man's land, right? And in those places, that's where things that go bump in the night lived, because death was a scary thing. Not to the fact that you died, but the fact that, a lot of times bodies could still carry disease, so you had to keep them far away. But the dog man has always been linked to the dead, whether it's in Egypt, 7,000 years ago, or whether it's in North America 2,000 years ago. These are different cultures separated by time and space, yet they still have the same functional dogman creature that operates within that world is so utterly recognizable. And the reason for that is I think that it deals not so much with the dead, but with portals.
mm, right. And to touch on another thing that you have mentioned, and I've sort of mentioned, which is the aggressiveness. Now, I didn't think about this until after I had to reread the Wet again, but there's a couple other things that actually also caught my attention of maybe why these creatures are aggressive as they are, and that is they are also known as a warrior god. They
Very much.
help, they help not just opening pathways, but they do it almost in a way of almost should. I mean, I even said this to in another conversation when I talked to another lady from Pennsylvania about dogmen, and I'm going to bring it up to you, which is when we hear about these strange creatures, Ron, and you brought it up too, these native burial, weird, weird areas where these things you would think not should be, but like, do you think maybe they're aggressive because of the history of the land? And what I mean by that is, let's take a look at a couple things like Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, right?
Mhm.
That there was a war that went on there. Bloody, everybody knows it. The blood soaked into the ground. It's going to be forever haunted anyway because of how many people had died there, right?
Mhm.
We we say that, and I don't know this. I just know about it being more haunted. You might have more insight of this than I do, but again, Gettysburg is another area of fascination of mine. I remember doing a report of Gettysburg in middle school. Anyway, the point that I'm trying to get to here is if we look at this Weep or Wet as this warrior god, of course it's going to be aggressive because we're going to be seeing the the battle side, the warrior side, the we're gonna charge with our spears and shield. Can we
Mhm.
maybe say that's what we're sort of seeing? We're seeing the protectors of the land,
Absolutely.
the
Yeah.
battle.
So you said that very eloquently. So what they would be called, so if we would go into, anthropology and we would use some of their jargon, this would be something would be called a tutelary spirit, which is a spirit of protection on the land itself, right?
Mm-hmm.
So whether this just derives from the land or it's some sort of, you know, spell put on the land, something manifested from the land by the people that live there, or what have you. The
Mm-hmm.
reason why these creatures keep on showing up around graveyards, it makes no sense other than saying they are there to protect it. They're the guardian between the realms, right? And they decide who enters and who stays away. Absolutely, sir. That's one of my theories as well. That whenever we see the dog man, however aggressive that they seem to serve a purpose of being not only the psychopompus, the being that takes the soul of the living to the other realm. Not only do they serve that function, but they also serve the function of simply guarding the domain of the dead.
Yeah, that's where I've been heading when I've been looking back at all this. Is just it just makes perfect sense. And then as with Anubis, he's just pretty much there guarding the
Mhm.
underworld and judging us by our heart to the feather
The
and
feather,
stuff
that's
like
right.
that.
That's right. Yeah, you know
Yeah,
your stuff. Good job, my friend.
dude, I'm telling you, when I was in middle school, when Egypt came around, man, that was like my key. I don't know why. Maybe just because of the weird fascination of how they looked at cats to this weird stuff of like Anubis, Wet stuff like that. Like I don't know, it just fascinates me. I love the fact that they're trying to remember how they word this now. Basically, they considered Wet was like a brother or the son of Anubis. Therefore, that's why it was linked to Osiris.
Right, yeah. There is definitely some, and I apologize, my Egyptian mythology has been a little bit rusty as of late. But yeah,
Me too, man.
yeah, Anubis, though, it seems to, that is like the typical dog man. The Whipplet seems a little bit different in that it seems to be a creature, right? It seems to be that form all the time and not so much something that can transform between man and beast.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
but there's definitely a lineage there, and there's definitely a symbiotic relationship there. Absolutely.
hmm Now, Ron, this might just be a pause on the dogman thing for a minute, but because you said a word, which is ironically enough, I actually sent out a thing earlier on my story asking if anybody had any questions for you, just to send it over. I had one come in. I have not gotten a chance to see if anybody else sent anything yet because I kind of was just like, oh, maybe I should try one of these again, see if I can get anybody else. Well, anyway, here's a question for you, and for some weird reason, it was pretty much spot on to a word that you had used when you were describing your encounter, or basically your research as a whole, maybe as I should say, maybe like as the investigator eye. And the question is from my buddy Jesse Savage. He's a blacksmith. I had him on the show because he was on a show for some sort of experiment as like how long it would take to burn like a quote human heart in the public because of the whole vampirism thing. But anyway, his question to you, Ron, is what is your experience for or knowledge for orbs?
Orbs, yeah. So yeah, the first time I had ever seen an orb. Well, I think there was a time that I saw it before, but it was something like I couldn't like wrap my mind around it because again I was looking for Bigfoot. Nothing, it was very kind of just thrown together. A buddy of mine and my brother, we were out in the woods trying to see, if we could find anything. And I saw this what I assumed was a plane on the horizon until this light started to go from the horizon into the trees, but I noticed that it wasn't behind the trees, it was in front of the trees. So instead of something being far off on the horizon, it was actually quite close, and it was just a single red light. And then it just weaved its ways through the trees and eventually vanished. So that's the first time I ever came associated with this. The second time is whenever I was down there investigating the Dogman. And then the third time was whenever I was filming an episode for Sasquatch Unearthed The Ridge by Small Town Monsters, and it's episode 2 called Spectral Bigfoot. You can find this on Tubi, you can find this on YouTube, and it's absolutely free to watch. And it is a documentation of us seeing these orbs, and I have no way to explain them away. I urge anybody that gets a chance to go ahead and watch it and see if they can make their own opinions as well too. But that was like the big one, and I worked with Small Town Monsters to write this book, Lights in the Mist, and then they did another movie after this as well too, called UAPs of the Forest, which was based upon my book. So there was three different ways to look at different angles to look at these orbs. But yeah, it was one of those things where it was actually filmed and documented, right? You can see what we were seeing, and it's
Mhm.
basically up to the person to make their own decisions.
Right, and that's why we had you on the first time around, Ronald, to talk about the documentary in a way because of your fact that you had this experiences in the book, really. But yeah, people can listen to that too. I'll plug it into the thing here too. Um, but so I guess to touch on the orb real quick, Ron, and then if there's anything else we can chat about before you have to let you go, we can do that. But um, so orb is a touchy subject, if I can say that, and that is
Mm-hmm.
because a lot of people think it's like bugs. It's what is it? Cobweb, dust. You
Mm-hmm.
know, how can we? I guess from your experience, I'll just say, how can we say, what we capture? What to say for the example, of like a picture. Oh, and we look at it and go, man, this looks so much different, or something like this shouldn't be there. And then we can say, like, I don't know, maybe if you were filming something, something may look like an orb, but it's actually dust particles or something.
Right, sure. Dust particles. I thought the same exact thing as well too. But the orbs that I saw had mass to them, right? Like we were close enough to like see them, right? Like it was as if they were evaluating us. There's really no other way to put it. It's as if they were curious about why we were there. They examined us, and then they kind of just basically toyed with us. I mean, these things were the size of anywhere from the size of a firefly to the size of a basketball. Like we were dealing with different sizes, things that were approaching us, things that were like leading us away, different colored ones. There were ones that were so bright there was actually casting shadows. So that is hard to explain away. What we saw, what we photographed on, this one occasion,
Mm-hmm.
really defies imagination. There's no other way to put it. What happened has no logical explanation. Whatever happened, it was out of the usual, it was out of the ordinary. But the other thing that has to be told as well too is what we were dealing with had intelligence, without a doubt. This wasn't an Earth flight just for the sake of it being, an unidentified light in the environment. This was something that had an intelligence. It knew that we had an intelligence as well, and it kind of interacted with us in a way that I've never thought humanly possible. I've never thought anybody would ever have this kind of reaction with a ball of light. Like you said, I've been studying orbs by most of my life because they pop up in all these kind of stories, especially ghost stories. But what we
Mm-hmm.
experienced that night, I have no other way of describing it, that we saw balls of light that had intelligence.
Mm. And that's scary to think about.
It is to think that that there's something out there in this world that we do not know exists, but it has an intelligence that from experience seems to be quite as high as ours.
Right, exactly. Now, I want to go back to your encounter for a minute, Ron, and that is when you were talking about this voice. Um, I don't, I don't think you mentioned it, but I'm just curious. When you heard this voice, was it like, how do they say it? Like it was almost like as if it was being mind spoken to you, or could you like literally hear as if you and I were talking?
Right. So it was definitely feminine, right? It was definitely feminine, and it was just a little higher pitch, as if something was really trying to get my attention. It just happened one time. It just said "Ron," and it wasn't videotaped, right? I had the video camera on, and it wasn't recorded. But my buddy who was there with me heard it as well, which is another strange thing. So it wasn't as if I was having some sort of audio hallucination, right? This was something that was actually out there, but it was also very personal as well too, to the point that it was subjective. we heard it, but apparently the electronic equipment did not.
Right. Oh man. Well, if you got time, Ron, I got a story I can share of my own where I had something similar to me happen.
Yeah, you know
Uh,
what? I'd love to hear it. I've got a daughter that I have to pick up from work, so I can give you a few more minutes, and then we'll have to make another plan to get together again.
dude, I love chatting with you. That's all I gotta say. So yeah, so um, man, I'm trying to think. I haven't really had a chance to really talk about this that much because it's just weird. I'll just leave it as that. But anyway, like I told you in the past or whatever, how earlier in the conversation about my dad, passing away or whatever. So anyway, this is years after he had passed, I believe, and because it makes sense that it happened this way. Um, Now I should also mention real quick is that when my dad passed away, um, I became broken. I bottled up my emotions, which is what you should never do. I had a night with my mom where I should have went to jail, but I didn't, and all I did was I blacked out and shoved her out of my face because she got into my face. I'll just say it that much. I didn't physically do anything else except for that. She was just in my face. Unfortunately, my bottled up emotions got the best of me, and that was it. Anyway, the point to this, and I think I want this into the story because I think it's important and maybe why it happened in the way it did, which is one night when I was sleeping, um, everybody else was asleep as well. That uh, you might know the term, Ron. I don't know about nowadays with some people, but I would sleep like you could say deadwood. Deadwood. Nothing gonna wake me up. Anyway,
Mhm.
uh, around 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning, I woke up because I heard my name in a whisper. And I shot right up. I was like, what? Like, hello? Like, I thought maybe my mother was up or maybe my sister was up. I physically got up out of bed and looked. My mother is sound asleep in her room, and so was the dog that we had at the time. So I was just like, okay, I'm gonna check my sister. My sister is asleep and snoring. So why did I hear my name? Now,
Exactly. Yeah.
yeah, I wish I could remember exactly what year this was, but for the life of me, I cannot remember what year this was because also, and this is where I'm trying to also remember too, is it was winter time and one weird, strange night, there was a knock on my window. Now, however, what makes this more weird to my memory is that my mother's boyfriend went outside to investigate. He came back in and told me he didn't know what it was because there's no tracks leading up to my window. That's another strange thing. And finally, the last thing I could share about this weird, mysterious voice is now it was 2008. I remember this specifically because this was around the time when I had a roommate, but he would work in the graveyard shift. I would work in the morning. Now, once again, 2:30, 3 o'clock rolls around. My name gets in a whisper. I shoot right up. And on this time, I'm like already was prepared for it or something. Like I just had enough or something. I was just like, yes, hello, you gonna say something else? I'm awake, I went back to sleep, never hearing my name ever again all these years later. So that's my stories.
Wow, 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 yeah. So it's odd because we've had these similar types of things happening. And if you and I've had these happening, that means other people has had them happening as well too. So hopefully whenever this show airs, and then you have me on again, which I hope that you do. Hopefully, people reach out to you because I would like to hear their stories as well.
Yeah, I'd love to find out if there's anybody out that had anything similar to this for sure. But yeah, Ronald, is there anything before we wrap this up that I didn't, I guess, give you a chance to share about this dog man chat or just anything in general?
You know what? No, you do such a fine job. Every time I talk with you, it's a conversation, and of course, we can go off on tangents and we go down one-way streets and turn around and again. But I do like that as part of conversations because it's a way of learning. But no, I've written a couple of self-help books since I'd spoken to you last. It's all on relationships and on self-care and manifesting and such. So hopefully, if anybody's into the metaphysical and looking forward to those things, those are available on Amazon. But yeah, I'm doing a lot of metaphysical stuff as of late as well. So catch me on that side or the paranormal side. But yeah, definitely. I mean, I'm looking forward to having this conversation with you again and listening to the feedback from the folks that listen in.
Yeah, definitely, Ronald. It's always a pleasure, and I thank you for the kind words. Yeah, I try to do my best, but sometimes you just got to feel people out. I guess that's the nature of things, isn't it?
It is. It is. Unfortunately and unfortunately, but yes, that is the nature of things.
That is right. All right, Ron. Well, I don't want to take any more of your time. We will have to have you on again because pretty soon it will be International Fairy Day, and there's probably
yeah.
and there's probably something else that I'm missing too. I should have pulled up the list, but yeah. Anyway, it's always a pleasure to talk to you, man, and we'll definitely have to chat again.
Hey, thank you. It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
You're welcome. And for everybody else that's gotten this far, you know what to do. Make sure you report back to us because, well, we want to know what happened to you, whether it be inside of the Green Mountains or outside of the Green Mountains.